The hidden side of routine checkups: most people believe that the more medical tests you get, the better your chances of staying healthy. It's become a reflex. Checkups, screenings, scans, all in the name of prevention. But what if I told you that after age 70, some of the most common tests might actually reduce your quality of life or worse, lead to complications, unnecessary treatments, and deep emotional stress? That's not fear-mongering. That's reality, one that more doctors are finally beginning to recognize. You see, most medical systems were built with younger bodies in mind, but aging changes everything. The body processes medications differently. Sedation lingers longer. Healing slows down. And the emotional toll of chasing what-ifs grows heavier. So today, we're going to take a deep, honest look at 10 medical tests that seniors over 70 should seriously reconsider, especially if you're not experiencing any symptoms. We'll explore why these tests are commonly recommended, the risks they carry, and smarter alternatives that protect your energy, your independence, and your peace of mind. Whether you're 70, 80, caring for someone who is, this video is your permission slip to say, wait, is this test actually helping me or just stressing me? Let's begin. Colonoscopy. When prevention becomes a burden. Let's start with a big one: colonoscopy. For decades, it's been praised as one of the most powerful cancer screenings, and for people in their 50s and 60s, it can save lives. But once you pass 70, especially with a history of clean results, the risks often outweigh the benefits. Why? The procedure requires full bowel prep, powerful laxatives that flush your system. For an older adult, this can cause severe dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, and falls during the night from dizziness. Then there's the sedation. As we age, the brain becomes more sensitive to sedatives. Some seniors experience memory fog, confusion, even delirium for days or weeks afterward. But here's what many don't realize. Most polyps found in seniors grow so slowly, they might never become cancer at all. Yet their discovery kicks off a chain of follow-up scopes, biopsies, and sometimes unnecessary surgeries. Take the case of Joan, 78 years old. Her colonoscopy revealed a small polyp, but unusual looking. That led to a second scope, then a biopsy, which caused a tear in her colon. She ended up in surgery, hospitalized for 3 weeks. She went in for peace of mind and left with a fear she never had before. Current guidelines suggest that if you're over 75, symptom-free, and had normal colonoscopies in the past, it's completely reasonable to stop routine screenings and switch to non-invasive tests like FIT or Cologuard. Prevention should never come at the cost of your well-being. PSA test. The prostate trap. The PSA blood test is often used to screen for prostate cancer in men, but after age 70, this test becomes far less helpful and much more harmful. Why? It's because the older you get, the more likely you are to have non-aggressive prostate changes that never cause harm. The problem is this: once your PSA level is elevated, you're on the fast track to biopsies, surgery, and radiation therapy, even when the cancer would have stayed silent for the rest of your life. Frank, 76, had a slightly elevated PSA. A biopsy followed. Then came surgery. Post-surgery, he developed incontinence and impotence side effects that deeply impacted his confidence in relationships. Later, he learned the cancer was so slow-growing, it likely never would have affected his health. Even the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force now advises against routine PSA screening in men over 70 who aren't having symptoms. Instead of chasing numbers, it's often better to focus on how you feel. Any issues with urination, pain, or pelvic discomfort? Then yes, investigate. But if you feel fine, you're allowed to decline. Full body scans. Seeing too much full body scans, especially CT scans, are becoming more common. It's often marketed at health fairs or private clinics. The promise is tempting. Catch every problem early. But the reality is these scans often catch harmless abnormalities, called incidental findings. And once something is spotted, you're pulled into a cycle. More tests, specialists, even surgery. Ben, 74, got a discounted scan at a mobile clinic. They found a shadow on his lung. 3 months later, after biopsies and scans, it was confirmed to be scar tissue from a childhood infection, totally harmless. But he spent months riddled with anxiety, lost weight, and took 5 different medications along the way. And don't forget the radiation exposure. A full-body CT scan exposes you to hundreds of X-rays worth of radiation in one sitting. If you're not experiencing symptoms, and your doctor hasn't recommended it for a specific reason, it's usually best to skip these scans. Cardiac stress tests. When the heart doesn't need a challenge, the treadmill stress test, it sounds like a logical thing to do. Test your heart under pressure to make sure it's still strong. But for seniors over 70, this test often causes more confusion than clarity. Here's why. As we age, our arteries naturally stiffen, our heart rhythms shift, and our baseline fitness declines. These are normal changes, but stress tests interpret them as red flags. The result? False positives test results that suggest there's a heart problem, even when there is in single quotes. And that sets off a dangerous domino effect. Angiograms, catheterizations, maybe even stent placements. For a heart that was doing just fine, Eleanor, age 80, had no chest pain, no fatigue, and walked every day. Her doctor recommended a routine stress test just to be proactive. It showed something suspicious. You're at 1 stent later, Eleanor developed an infection, spent weeks in the hospital, and never fully recovered her energy. The scariest part, her original symptoms never existed, unless you're experiencing new chest discomfort, shortness of breath, or unexplained fatigue. Most cardiologists agree. Routine stress testing in asymptomatic seniors isn't helpful. Instead, prioritize real life. Stress tests: can you walk around the block without trouble? Climb stairs? Laugh without gasping? That tells you more about your heart than machines ever could. Bone density scans: when numbers don't tell the whole story. Let's talk about DEXA scans. It's also known as bone density tests. These tests are often recommended to screen for osteoporosis, especially in older women. But the question is, if you haven't had a fracture, if you're mobile and steady, do you need the scan? The truth is, most people over 70 have some degree of bone loss. It's part of aging. A slightly lower T-score doesn't always mean you're at high risk of a fracture. Yet, many seniors are quickly placed on strong medications like bisphosphonates or Prolia based on scan results alone. And those drugs? They come with side effects. Jaw pain, esophageal irritation, even atypical fractures after long use. Marlene, 76, had a scan that showed osteopenia, odd even full-blown osteoporosis. Her doctor started her on medication anyway. Within 6 months, she experienced joint stiffness and bone pain, so intense she had to use a walker. Here's the thing: if you're already doing the basics, weight-bearing exercise, taking vitamin D and calcium, avoiding smoking and alcohol, your bones are getting real protection, unless you've had a fall, a fracture, or other clear risk factors. It's perfectly reasonable to hold off on bone scans. And remember, fall prevention does more to prevent fractures than any pill ever could. Mammograms after 75? More harm than help? Now let's talk about mammograms. Breast cancer is a real concern, and mammograms have saved lives. It's true, but after age 75, the benefits become murky on the risks. It's often overlooked. Most breast cancers in older women are slow-growing. Some never spread, and many detected by mammograms at this age would never have caused problems in a woman's lifetime. But once found, they almost always lead to treatment, biopsies, surgery, radiation, and sometimes chemotherapy. Carla, age 79, had a mammogram that showed a small lump. It was caught early, but she ended up having a lumpectomy, radiation, and hormonal therapy. The side effects were harsh: fatigue, hot flashes, and joint pain. All for a cancer that may never have become dangerous. And the emotional toll? Immense anxiety, follow-ups, fear of recurrence. Sleepless nights. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force does not recommend routine mammograms for women over 75, unless they're in excellent health and expected to live at least 10 more years, that might sound blunt, but it's about weighing benefit versus burden. If you've had a clear record, no symptoms, and your doctor agrees, you can choose to stop. That's not neglect. That's wisdom. You're not giving up, you're deciding how much of your time, your energy, and your peace you want to invest in something that might not even matter. Thyroid tests the overdiagnosed hormone you. You probably heard of the TSH test, a blood test that measures your thyroid function. It's often included in routine panels for older adults, even when they have no symptoms. But here's something. Doctors are increasingly admitting mild thyroid abnormalities in seniors are often harmless. Treating them can cause more harm than good. As we age, our TSH levels naturally shift. What might look abnormal on paper may be perfectly normal for someone in their 70s or 80s. But once the test comes back off, many people are placed on thyroid medications like levothyroxine, and those medications, they can cause heart palpitations, anxiety, bone loss, and muscle weakness, especially if the dose isn't carefully managed. Take Ronald, 82, who was told his TSH was a little high. He had no symptoms, no fatigue, no weight gain, no cold intolerance. Still, he was prescribed medication. A few months later, he started feeling anxious, shaky, and dizzy. The medication had overcorrected his thyroid, putting him in a state of hyperthyroidism for seniors without clear symptoms. Many endocrinologists now recommend a watch-and-wait approach to mild thyroid changes. Ask yourself, am I feeling fine? Am I active and alert? If the answer is yes, a slightly abnormal lab value may not need treatment. Health is not just about numbers, it's about how you live, move, and feel. Brain scans for memory, when they mislead memory loss, is one of the biggest fears we face as we age. So it's natural to want clarity, maybe even to request a brain scan. But here's a difficult truth. MRI and CT scans rarely give seniors the reassurance they're looking for. Why? Because most older adults show some degree of brain shrinkage, or white matter changes on scans. It's called age-related brain atrophy, and it's normal, but once something is spotted on a scan, it often sets off panic. Helen, 77, had been forgetting names occasionally, nothing unusual. Her doctor ordered a brain MRI to be safe. The scan showed mild cortical atrophy and a possible early lesion. The result? Months of anxiety, multiple neurology visits, a trial of dementia medication, and no improvement. Because she wasn't sick to begin with. In fact, no scan can reliably predict Alzheimer's or dementia in the early stages. The best diagnostic tools are still cognitive assessments, simple, symptom-based evaluations done by trained professionals. If memory issues arise, don't run to a scanner. Talk with your doctor. Explore lifestyle factors. Sleep, nutrition, medications, emotional stress. So many things affect memory besides disease. Let's not trade peace of mind for medical noise. Annual EKGs, test that creates trouble every year. Millions of seniors get an electrocardiogram or EKG during their routine checkup. It's quick, it's painless, and seems harmless. But the truth is, for people without symptoms, EKGs are one of the most overused and misleading tests in modern medicine. The heart changes with age. You might have slight rhythm changes, electrical shifts, or even small areas of scarring from decades past. These often show up on EKGs even when there's no disease, and once something abnormal appears, it sets off a familiar pattern: referrals, stress tests, imaging, and possibly unnecessary procedures. James, 81, had an EKG that showed a minor irregularity. He'd never had chest pain, never felt faint. Still, his doctor sent him for a Holter monitor, then a stress test, and finally a cardiac catheterization. The result? A small artery that didn't need treatment, but a long, exhausting medical journey that left him feeling like a patient instead of a person. Unless you're having symptoms, palpitations, lightheadedness, unexplained fetagglutinin, EKGs aren't necessary for most seniors. Sometimes, Knowing less protects more. Vitamin panels and wellness labs, expensive and unnecessary. The wellness industry loves selling extensive lab panels. Just check all your vitamins. They say, see what's off? And who doesn't want to be optimal? But here's the catch. Most of these tests are unnecessary. And interpreting the results can be misleading. Many seniors are told they're low on things like vitamin D, B12, or magnesium, based on arbitrary lab cutoffs, but those numbers don't always reflect your actual health status, and once labeled as deficient, people start popping pills, sometimes high doses of supplements that interact with medications or affect kidney function. Take Naomi, 75. She was told her vitamin B6 was borderline low. She started a supplement. Within weeks, developed tingling and numbness of side effect of excess B6. What's worse? Many of these panels cost hundreds of dollars and are not covered by insurance, unless your doctor suspects a deficiency based on symptoms like fatigue, nerve pain, or changes in balance. Routine vitamin testing isn't needed. You're not a lab report. You're a living, breathing human being, and your well-being isn't defined by micromanaged numbers. The wisdom to choose less growing older is not a disease. It's a chapter rich with reflection, strength, clarity. But in a healthcare system that treats aging as a problem to fix, it's easy to feel caught in the gears of over-testing and over-treatment. What we've explored today isn't about ignoring your health. It's about honoring your body, your time, your dignity. Each of the 10 tests we discussed, colonoscopy, PSA, full body scans, stress tests, bone scans, mammograms, thyroid tests, brain MR is EKGs, and vitamin panels have their place, but that place isn't always in your life. At this stage, saying no to a test isn't reckless. It's thoughtful. It means you're asking, will this test change how I feel? Will it improve my life in a real, meaningful way? Or will it start a chain of stress, side effects, and fear? That's the wisdom that comes with age, the wisdom to live with intention, not impulse. The courage to ask hard questions, the clarity to know what truly matters. And if you've made it this far in the video, you are already living that wisdom. So talk with your doctor. It's not just about what tests are available, but about what's right for you. Bring up your goals, your lifestyle, your hopes for this stage of life, because this season isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving on your terms. If this video helped you see your health in a new light, share it with someone you care about, especially if they're over 70 and feeling overwhelmed by the medical world. Leave a comment below and tell us, which of these 10 tests surprised you the most and why? We read every comment, and your voice helps shape future content if you haven't already. Subscribe and click the bell to stay informed, empowered, and connected to a community that values aging with strength, clarity, and wisdom. This isn't just a channel, it's a movement. Thank you for being part of it. Our digital environment is a dopamine delivery machine. Every notification, every like, every new email, every surprising headline provides a small, unpredictable reward. The unpredictability is key. This is the same principle that makes slot machines in Las Vegas so powerfully addictive. You never know when the next reward is coming, so you keep pulling the lever. You keep checking your phone. This creates what is known as a dopamine loop. The anticipation of a reward triggers a release of dopamine, which motivates you to seek the reward. When you get it, you get another little hit, which reinforces the seeking behavior. Over time, your brain becomes conditioned to crave these small, frequent bursts of stimulation. It recalibrates your sense of what is interesting. Compared to this rapid-fire reward system, the slow, quiet work of reading a book, writing a report, or having a deep conversation can feel boring. The long-term rewards of deep focus are immense, but they are delayed. The brain's more primitive, dopamine-seeking systems often favor the immediate, easy gratification of a distraction. There's a third psychological force at play as well, our deep-seated fear of missing out, or FOMO. As social creatures, our survival has always depended on being part of the group and staying informed about potential threats and opportunities. Being ostracized or left out of a loop was, for our ancestors, a death sentence. This ancient fear is now constantly activated by our hyper-connected world. The feeling that if we disconnect, even for an hour, we might miss a crucial piece of news, an important social update, or a professional opportunity. Our brain interprets this missing out as a potential threat, which triggers a state of low-level anxiety and a powerful urge to reconnect, to check to make sure we are still in the know. So when we try to focus, we are not just fighting against a distracting world. We are fighting against our own deeply ingrained neurobiology. We are pushing against the brain's default storyteller, its craving for novelty-fueled dopamine hits, and its ancient fear of being left behind. It's no wonder it feels so hard. It's no wonder our attention feels so fragmented. But understanding this is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for self-compassion. When your mind wanders, it is not a sign of failure. It is not a moral weakness. It is a sign that your brain is doing what it was designed to do in a world it was not designed for. The challenge and the opportunity is to learn how to gently and repeatedly guide it back, to become the skillful rider of this wild, beautiful, wandering mind. And as we will see, there are specific ways to strengthen the parts of our brain that do just that. The brain under focus. The neuroscience of attention. If the default mode network is the brain's wandering storyteller, what is its counterpart? What is happening in our neural circuitry when we are fully absorbed, when time seems to melt away, and the world narrows to a single point of concentration? This is the state of deep focus, a neurological superpower that lies dormant in all of us. When we shift from mind-wandering to focused attention, we are essentially turning down the volume on the default mode network and turning up the volume on another crucial system, the task-positive network. It's also known as the executive control network. Imagine your brain as a grand orchestra. The default mode network is the string section, playing a flowing, improvisational melody of thoughts and memories, beautiful but untamed. The task-positive network is the conductor, standing at the podium, tapping their baton, and calling the entire orchestra to attention. The conductor's job is not to silence the strings, but to integrate them into a larger, more coherent piece of music, directing them to play a single, powerful symphony. This network is primarily located in the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain right behind your forehead. This is the most recently evolved part of our brain, and it's the CEO, the planner, the decision maker. It's the region responsible for what scientists call executive functions, things like planning, working memory, problem solving, and impulse control. It's the part of Marcus Aurelius that reminded him to stay on task. It is the neurological seat of your willpower. When you decide to focus on something, whether it's this audio, it's a difficult math problem, or the breath entering and leaving your body, your prefrontal cortex sends signals that organize and direct the brain's resources. It does two main things in a delicate push-pull dance. First, it enhances the relevant signals. This is called top-down attention. It's your intention, your will, making a choice. Your prefrontal cortex tells the sensory parts of your brain, pay attention to this. Amplify the information coming from this book, this voice, this sensation. It's what matters right now. It's like turning up the gain on a specific microphone in a crowded room. Second, and just as importantly, it suppresses the irrelevant signals. It acts like a filter or a bouncer at the door of your consciousness. It says to the internal chatter of the DMN and the external bottom-up distractions of the world, like a sudden noise or movement, "Hey, you are not on the guest list right now. Please wait outside." This ability to inhibit distraction is a core function of the focused mind. This entire process is fueled by a cocktail of neurochemicals. Two of the most important are norepinephrine and acetylcholine. Norepinephrine is like the brain's alarm bell. It's released when something important or novel happens, signaling to the brain, wake up, pay attention. It helps to sharpen your focus and create a state of alertness. A small, steady amount is crucial for concentration, though. Too much, as in a state of high stress, can flood the system and make focus impossible. Acetylcholine, on the other hand, is more like a spotlight, or perhaps a laser pointer. It's a neurotransmitter that helps you lock your focus onto a specific object or thought and sustain it over time. When you are deeply engrossed in an activity, your brain is bathing the relevant neurons in acetylcholine, which makes them more responsive and helps to carve that information more deeply into your memory. This is why you learn best when you are focused. Acetylcholine is essentially saying this. Remember this. So, a focused mind is a delicate, dynamic dance. Prefrontal cortex acts as the director, using norepinephrine to signal action, and acetylcholine to keep the spotlight steady, all while actively suppressing the brain's natural tendency to wander off with the DMN. This is an energy-intensive process. Maintaining a state of deep focus literally consumes more glucose than mind-wandering does. This is why concentration can feel so tiring and why our capacity for it is finite. You can't keep your focus muscle flexed all day long, just as you can't lift a heavy weight indefinitely. It needs periods of rest and recovery. This is where breaks, naps, and even moments of intentional mind-wandering can be restorative, allowing the DMN to do its creative work before the conductor steps back to the podium. The beautiful thing, and perhaps the most hopeful finding in all of neuroscience, is neuroplasticity. This is the brain's ability to change its own structure and function in response to experience. Every time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently bring it back to your point of focus, you are performing a mental repetition. You are strengthening the neural pathways of the task-positive network. You are literally making the connections between your prefrontal cortex and other brain regions thicker and faster. You are training your prefrontal cortex to be a more effective conductor. This is the neuroscientific basis of mindfulness, meditation, and other contemplative practices. The simple act of repeatedly returning your attention to your breath over and over again is a workout for your brain's focus circuits. Studies using fMRI have shown that long-term meditators have a thicker prefrontal cortex, stronger connections within the task-positive network, and a better ability to quiet the default mode network on command. They have quite literally rewired their brains for focus and calm. This isn't about eradicating the wandering mind. The storyteller in our DMN is a vital part of who we are. It's about achieving a better balance. It's about being able to choose where your attention goes. It's about being the one who decides when it's time for the orchestra to improvise, and when it's time for them to play the symphony. To have a quiet mind is not to have an empty mind. It is to have an ordered mind, a mind where you are, the gentle, wise, and attentive conductor of your own inner world. The dichotomy of control, your inner citadel. There is a single idea at the very heart of Stoicism that, once truly understood and integrated, has the power to quiet the vast majority of our mental noise. It is simple, profound, and perhaps the most practical philosophical tool ever conceived for finding peace in a turbulent world. It is called the Dichotomy of Control. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave in a wealthy Roman household and ended it as one of the most revered teachers in the empire, put it this way in the opening line of his handbook, the Enchiridion: some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us. Let's let that sink in for a moment. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Obvious even. Yet within this simple sentence lies a complete operating system for a peaceful mind. It is a filter through which we can pass every experience, every thought, every emotion, to determine its proper place. What is up to us? According to the Stoics, only our own inner world. Our thoughts, our judgments, our choices, our intentions, and the direction of our attention. That's it. That is the entirety of our kingdom. It is the only realm where we are absolute sovereigns. What is not up to us? Everything else, the weather, the economy, what other people think of us, whether someone cuts us off in traffic, our health in the ultimate sense, the past, the future, it's the vast, swirling, unpredictable cosmos of external events. The root of almost all human suffering, the Stoics argued, is a confusion between these two categories. We spend our precious time, energy, and attention desperately trying to control the things that are not up to us, while neglecting the one domain where we have absolute sovereignty, our own mind. Think of the last time you felt intense anxiety or frustration. Chances are it was because you were fixated on something outside of your control. You were angry that the train was late. You were anxious about a presentation, worrying about how your boss would react. You were hurt by a comment a friend made. You were despairing over a political event. In each case, your emotional turmoil was caused not by the event itself, but by your desire for the event to be different. A desire aimed at something you could not command. The Stoic practice is to constantly, gently, and rigorously apply this filter to every situation. When you feel a wave of emotion, anger, fear, desire, you pause. You become the curious scientist of your own experience. You ask yourself, is the source of this feeling something that is up to me or not up to me? And if it is not up to you, like the traffic jam you're stuck in, then your task is to practice acceptance. This is not a passive resignation, not a weak surrender. It is an active, intelligent, and courageous acceptance of reality as it is in this moment. Fighting it, fuming about it, laying on the horn, these actions do nothing to change the traffic. They only serve to disturb your own peace of mind. They are a profound waste of your precious attention. The Stoic choice is to accept the reality of the situation and turn your focus to what you can control, your response. You can listen to this audio. You can practice your breathing. You can notice the color of the sky. You can choose to be calm in a situation where others are agitated. You can transform a prison of frustration into a monastery of patience. If the source of the feeling is up to you, perhaps you made a mistake at work and are feeling shame, or you spoke unkindly to someone and feel regret, then your task is to take responsibility and act. You don't waste time blaming others or wishing the past were different, which is not up to you. You turn your attention to your choices in the present moment. What can I do right now to amend this? How can I learn from this? What virtuous action can I take? This is where your power lies. This practice is the creation of what Marcus Aurelius called the inner citadel. It is a fortress of the mind, a place of unshakable tranquility. It is built, brick by brick, every time you correctly identify what you can and cannot control and act accordingly. The chaos of the world, the political storms, the personal betrayals, the professional setbacks rage outside the walls. But within the citadel, you remain calm, clear-headed, and free. This isn't about being passive or uncaring about the world. It's about being effective. The Stoics were men of action. Seneca was a wealthy statesman. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor who spent years on the battlefield. But they understood that their effectiveness in the world depended on their inner clarity. You cannot make wise decisions when your mind is clouded by rage or fear. You cannot help others when you are a prisoner of your own anxieties. By focusing only on what is in your control, you liberate an immense amount of mental energy that was previously wasted on fruitless worry. You become more present, more resilient, and paradoxically, more capable of influencing the world in a positive way. In our modern world, this practice is a powerful antidote to the noise. Social media, for example, is a fire hose of things we cannot control. The opinions of strangers, viral trends, global events. The undisciplined mind gets swept away in this current, feeling angry, outraged, and helpless. The Stoic mind observes, this flow takes from it what is useful and lets the rest pass by, preserving its attention for its own thoughts and actions. The dichotomy of control is not a one-time insight. It is a lifelong practice. It is a habit of mind to be cultivated every day, in every situation. It is the gentle but firm redirection of your focus away from the turbulent ocean of the external world and toward the quiet, steady ground of your own inner kingdom. So the next time you feel that familiar tug of anxiety or frustration, try this quiet experiment. Pause, breathe, and ask that simple, life-changing question. Is this up to me? In that small space of inquiry, you will find the beginning of a quiet mind. Amor, Fati. The art of loving what is. If the dichotomy of control is the foundation of the inner citadel, then there is another, even more profound Stoic concept that forms its highest Tarita vantage point from which one can find not just peace, but joy in the face of life's inevitable challenges. This concept is Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This idea, most famously articulated by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, but with deep roots in Stoicism, takes the principle of acceptance a radical step. Further, it is not enough to merely tolerate or endure what is outside of our control. The ultimate practice is to learn to love it, to embrace it, to see it not as an obstacle to our happiness, but as the very material from which our happiness is forged. Seneca wrote, "A good man rejoices in trials." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." These are not the words of masochists. They are the words of alchemists. They believed that any event, no matter how seemingly negative, could be transformed into a source of strength, wisdom, and virtue. Imagine a blacksmith forging a sword. The blacksmith needs fire. The fire is hot, dangerous, and destructive, but it is also the very thing that purifies the metal, allows it to be shaped, and gives the blade its strength. For the blacksmith, the fire is not an enemy. It is a necessary partner in the act of creation. For the Stoic, life's difficulties, a financial loss, a health diagnosis, a betrayal by a friend are the fire. Our undisciplined mind sees only the destructive heat and recoils in fear and anger. It wishes for a world without fire. The mind practicing Amor Fati sees the fire as an opportunity to practice courage, an opportunity to practice resilience, an opportunity to practice forgiveness, an opportunity to become a stronger, wiser, more compassionate human being. This is not a call for blind optimism or for pretending that painful things are not painful. The pain is real. The loss is real. Amor Fati does not deny this reality. It accepts it so completely that it chooses to find the good in it. It asks the question, given that this has happened and I cannot change it, how can I use this to become better? What lesson is here for me? What virtue can I practice? Let's take a practical example. Imagine you lose your job. The initial reaction is fear, anger, and self-pity. This is the natural response of the mind focused on what it has lost. The mind practicing Amor Fati would, after allowing for the initial shock, begin to shift its focus. It might say, "This has happened. It is my fate in this moment. I will not waste my energy wishing it were different. Perhaps this is the push I needed to change careers. Perhaps this will teach me about my own resilience. Perhaps this will give me more time with my family. I will not just endure this. I will use this. I will love this event for the strength. It is forcing me to find within myself. This is an incredibly difficult practice. It is perhaps the highest form of mental discipline, but its power is immense. The person who can truly practice Amor Fati becomes invincible. Not because nothing bad happens to them, but because they have decided that nothing that happens can truly be bad. Every event becomes fuel. Every setback becomes a setup for a comeback. Every obstacle becomes the path itself. In our modern world, we are often taught to curate our lives, to seek pleasure and avoid pain, to construct a perfect, frictionless existence. Amor Fati is the ultimate rebellion against this fragile mindset. It is the embrace of life in its totality, the beautiful and the terrible, the smooth and the jagged. It is the understanding that you cannot have the strength of the oak tree without the wind that forces it to grow deep roots. To love one's fate is to quiet the loudest voice of our inner critic, the voice that says, "This shouldn't be happening." When you can replace that voice with a quiet, powerful whisper that says, "This is happening, and I will love it for what it can teach me," you have found a source of peace that the world cannot take away. You have moved beyond simply defending your inner citadel and have learned to cultivate a beautiful garden within its walls, a garden that can bloom in any weather. The inner critic and negative visualization taming the anxious mind. Just as our sleeping minds can conjure nightmares, our waking minds are haunted by their own phantoms. The inner critic that whispers you're not good enough, the anxious voice that catastrophizes about the future, spinning tales of failure and humiliation, the ruminating thought that replays a past mistake over and over, like a scratched record. These are the night terrors of our daily consciousness. They are perhaps the greatest source of our distraction, pulling our attention away from the present moment and into a shadowy theater of fear and self-doubt. So how do we deal with these inner demons? How do we quiet these ghosts? Stoics had a surprising, counterintuitive, and remarkably effective technique. It's a practice that at first sounds like the exact opposite of what you should do. It's called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Or as we might call it today, negative visualization. The modern world, particularly in the realm of self-help, is often obsessed with positive thinking. We are told to visualize success, to affirm our greatness, to banish all negative thoughts. The Stoics would have found this approach to be fragile and naive. They believed that the person who only expects good things is easily shattered when things, as they inevitably do, go wrong. The unexpected blow is always the heaviest. A mind built only on positive expectations is a house built on sand, ready to collapse at the first sign of a storm. So instead of avoiding the thought of negative outcomes, the Stoics deliberately and calmly contemplated them. In the morning, as he faced the daunting task of ruling an empire, Marcus Aurelius would tell himself, "Today, I shall be meeting with interference, gratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." This was not an act of pessimism, designed to make him miserable. It was an act of psychological preparation. It was a form of mental vaccination. By imagining these difficulties in advance, he was doing several profound things. First, he was robbing them of their power of surprise. When he did encounter a difficult person, it wouldn't be a shock to his system. He wouldn't waste energy thinking, "Why is this happening to me? People shouldn't be this way." He had already considered the possibility. His mind was prepared, not panicked. He could respond with the calm reason of his inner citadel, rather than the reactive anger of a surprised ego. Second, he was practicing gratitude for when things went well. If he went through his day and did not encounter insolence and ingratitude, his day would feel like a gift. By starting with a lower, more realistic baseline of expectation, he found more to be grateful for in the reality of his life. The person who expects a perfect day is constantly disappointed. The person who is prepared for a difficult day is often pleasantly surprised. Third, he was rehearsing his response. By imagining the insolent person, he could also imagine his own virtuous, stoic response, patience, understanding, and firmness without anger. He was training his mind to choose reason over rage. Seneca, in his letters, advised his friend Lucilius to regularly set aside a few days to practice poverty, to eat the plainest food, wear the simplest clothes, and sleep on the floor. The goal was not to punish himself, but to ask the question, is this the condition that I so feared? By experiencing a version of his fear in a controlled way, he would almost certainly realize that he could survive it. He would realize it was not the catastrophe his anxious mind had made it out to be. This practice tempered his fear of loss, reduced his attachment to luxury, and made him appreciate his normal comforts all the more. This is the essence of negative visualization. It is not about wallowing in anxiety. It is a controlled, rational, and temporary descent into your fears in order to inoculate yourself against them. You can apply this in small ways in your own life. For a big presentation instead of only visualizing success, take a moment to calmly consider what might go wrong. The projector might fail. You might forget a key point. You might get a tough question you can't answer. Then for each possibility, you can plan your response. If the projector fails, I'll have handouts ready and speak from my notes.
No.
If I forget a point, I'll pause, take a breath, and say, let me just gather my thought for a moment. If I get a question I can't answer, I will honestly say that's an excellent question, and I don't have the data on that right now, but I will find out and get back to you. By preparing for failure, you become less afraid of it. You build a quiet confidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. This practice is a powerful tool for taming the inner critic and the anxious mind. Anxiety is often fueled by a vague, undefined fear of the future. Negative visualization forces you to define that fear, to drag it out into the light and look it in the eye. And when you look at it closely, you often find that the monster in the shadows is much smaller than you imagined. It is a paradox. By looking at the darkness, we become more comfortable in the light. By contemplating what we might lose, we learn to love what we have more deeply. It is a strange and gentle art, this practice of befriending our fears. But in doing so, we rob them of their power to distract us, to pull us into the vortex of anxiety. We learn to quiet the ghosts within, and to walk through our days with a steady, resilient, and peaceful mind. Focus and emotional well-being. A dialogue with the self. We often think of focus as a cold, cognitive tool, a mechanism for productivity, a way to get things done. But its connection to our emotional landscape is far more profound, far more intimate. The state of our attention is not just a reflection of our mental health. It is a powerful force that shapes it. The dialogue we have with ourselves, that constant inner narration, is conducted in the language of focus. Think of your emotional well-being as a garden. A scattered, distracted mind is like a gardener who runs around frantically, pulling a single weed here, watering one flower there, or getting distracted by a passing butterfly, never staying in one place long enough to truly tend to the soil. Result is a garden that is overgrown with the weeds of anxiety, with patches of dry, untended earth representing our neglected joys. It is a garden that is chaotic and lacking vitality. A focused mind, on the other hand, is like a patient, attentive gardener. It can sit with a single planta, single feeling or thought, give it the attention it needs. It can distinguish between the weeds of rumination that need to be gently, but firmly pulled, and the delicate flowers of insight that need to be nurtured with care. It knows when to water, when to prune, and when to simply let things be. Modern psychology has given us a beautiful concept that captures this state of deep, effortless focus, flow. Coined by the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, flow is the experience of being so completely absorbed in an activity that everything else disappears. Your sense of time is distorted. Ours can feel like minutes. Your ego melts away. The sense of a separate you doing the activity vanishes, and you merge with the action itself. You feel a sense of clarity, control, and deep enjoyment. The state an artist feels when painting, a musician when playing, a writer when lost in a story, or a programmer deep in code. Csikszentmihalyi's decades of research found that people report their highest levels of happiness and life satisfaction when they are in a state of flow, not when they are relaxing on a beach or passively watching television, but when they are actively engaged in a challenging task that requires their full concentration. This is a modern, scientific echo of what the Stoics knew 2,000 years ago. A good life, a eudaimonic life, is not a life of ease, but a life of virtuous, focused activity. Flow is, in many ways, the psychological experience of being in your inner citadel. When you are in flow, your default mode network is quiet. Your inner critic is silent. You're not worrying about the past or the future. You are fully, completely present. Your attention is not divided. It is unified. Conversely, a lack of focus is strongly linked to negative emotional states. We've already touched on the Harvard study that found a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. This connection is particularly strong and well documented in conditions like anxiety and depression. In anxiety disorders, the mind is often locked in a state of hypervigilant, scattered attention. It is constantly scanning the horizon for potential threats, real or imagined. It cannot rest. It cannot settle on a single peaceful point of focus. It is a mind at war with 1,000 possible futures, flitting from one worry to the next. In depression, the mind often becomes stuck in a different kind of focus, a narrow, ruminative loop. Attention is fixated on past failures, on feelings of worthlessness, on the negative aspects of the self. It's as if the spotlight of attention is stuck on the darkest corner of the inner landscape, unable to move and illuminate anything else. The world shrinks to the size of one's own pain. The practice of cultivating attention then becomes a form of gentle, self-directed therapy. When we train our minds to focus, we are not just improving our ability to work, we are developing the capacity to regulate our own emotional state. Mindfulness meditation, at its core, is this practice in action. By repeatedly and non-judgmentally bringing your attention back to the sensation of the breath, you are doing several things. You are strengthening your focus muscle, the task-positive network. You are learning to observe your thoughts and feelings without being swept away by them, recognizing that you are the sky, not the clouds that pass through it. And you are creating a home base for your attention, a calm anchor to which you can return. Whenever you feel lost in an emotional storm, this dialogue with the self is a delicate one. It's not about forcefully suppressing negative emotions or engaging in a battle with your own mind. It only creates more tension. It's about giving your emotions a different quality of attention. Instead of being consumed by anxiety, you can learn to observe it with a gentle curiosity. There is anxiety. I can feel it as a tightness in my chest. It is a sensation. It is here now, and it will pass. By shifting from being the emotion to being the observer of the emotion, you create space. You reclaim your inner citadel. You remember that you are the one who is aware, not just the emotion itself. In that space, you find you have a choice. This is the profound link between focus and peace. A quiet mind is not a mind that is empty of thought or feeling. It is a mind that has a stable, peaceful relationship with its own contents. It is a mind where the conscious, compassionate self is the gentle guardian of attention, able to navigate the rich and sometimes challenging. A landscape of human emotion with grace, clarity, and a quiet strength. The practice in action daily. Rituals for a quiet mind. Philosophy and psychology are beautiful. They find their true power when they leave the realm of theory and enter the rhythm of our daily lives. A quiet mind is not a destination we arrive at, but a path we walk every day. It is cultivated through small, consistent, and gentle rituals. It is a garden that requires daily, loving attention. So, let's explore a few simple, practical rituals. Inspired by both ancient Stoicism and modern science, that you can weave into the fabric of your day to build your own inner citadel and tend to your inner garden. 1. The morning page. A dialogue with the dawn before you reach for your phone, before the noise of the world and the demands of others. Rush in. Begin your day with a moment of quiet reflection. This is a practice inspired by Marcus Aurelius, who started his days by preparing his mind and by the modern concept of morning pages. Popularized by Julia Cameron, keep a simple notebook and a pen by your bed when you wake up before doing anything else, right? Write 1 page or 3. There are no rules for what you write. It is not for anyone else to read. It can be a stream of consciousness, a list of your anxieties, a description of a dream, a statement of your intentions for the day, or a reflection on a Stoic principle. The goal is not to create a masterpiece. The goal is to perform a mental data dump. It's to get the swirling, chaotic thoughts out of your head and onto the page. This act of externalizing your thoughts does 2 things. Clears your mind, creating a sense of space and calm. It allows you to see your thoughts more objectively. A worry that seems enormous and all-consuming inside your head often looks much smaller and more manageable when written down in ink. You might use this time to practice negative visualization, as we discussed. What challenges might I face today, and how will I meet them with virtue? Or you could use it to set an intention for your attention, asking yourself, what is the most important thing for me to focus on today? What is my chief task? It's a simple ritual, just 5 or 10 minutes long, sets the tone for a more intentional, less reactive day. It is an act of claiming the first moments for yourself, of starting the day from your inner citadel. 2. Monotasking. As a radical act in a world that glorifies multitasking, the act of doing only one thing at a time has become a quiet rebellion. We now know from neuroscience that the brain does not truly multitask. It simply switches its attention very rapidly from one thing to another, a process called task switching. This is incredibly inefficient and mentally exhausting, as it burns through the brain's limited supply of glucose and willpower. Choose one activity each day to practice monotasking with your full attention. It could be drinking your morning coffee. Don't scroll through your phone or listen to a podcast. Just drink the coffee. Notice the warmth of the mug, the aroma, the taste. It could be washing the dishes. Feel the warm water on your hands. See the soap bubbles. Hear the clink of the plates. It could be the first 20 minutes of your workday. Close all tabs except the one you need. Put your phone in another room. Set a timer and give that single task your undivided focus. This practice trains your brain to sustain its focus. It's a form of mindfulness in action. It teaches you to find richness and depth in the mundane, and it demonstrates through direct experience how much more effective and peaceful it is to do one thing at a time. 3. The Stoic pause. Finding stillness. In the storm throughout your day, the world will inevitably try to pull you into reactivity. An annoying email lands in your inbox. Someone says something that triggers you. You feel a sudden wave of stress or anger. These moments are the true test of your practice. In these moments, practice the Stoic pause. It is the deliberate creation of a gap between stimulus and response. The moment you feel that emotional trigger, instead of reacting immediately, you do 3 things. First, stop, just for a second. Do not type. Do not speak. Second, breathe. Take 1 slow, conscious breath. Feel the air enter your nostrils and fill your lungs. Feel your feet on the floor. Third, ask. Silently ask yourself that vital question. Is this in my control? What is the most virtuous or wise way to respond right now? This entire process can take less than 3 seconds, but it is revolutionary. It breaks the conditioned cycle of reactivity, re-engages your prefrontal cortex, your rational mind, and pulls you out of the grip of your emotional, reptilian brain. It is the practice of prosocion in miniature, a tiny moment of mindfulness that can change the entire course of an interaction and preserve the peace of your inner citadel. 4. Designing your environment for focus. The Stoics knew that we are influenced by our surroundings. Seneca advised choosing one's companions and living situation with care. We can apply this wisdom to our digital and physical environments. You can make focus the path of least resistance. Digital decluttering. Practice a conscious information diet. Be as intentional about what you consume mentally as you are about what you consume physically. Unsubscribe from newsletters you don't read. Unfollow accounts that make you feel angry or inadequate. Turn off all non-essential notifications on your phone. You are the curator of your own mental environment. Physical space. Designate a specific space for focused work, if you can. Keep it clean and free of clutter. Clutter in your physical space often leads to clutter in your mental space. Make sure the tools you need are easily accessible and the sources of distraction are out of sight. The simple act of putting your phone in a drawer in another room can dramatically increase your ability to concentrate. 5. The digital sunset just as the sun sets in the evening. Create a time when your digital day comes to an end. An hour or two before you plan to sleep, put your devices away. All of them. The blue light from screens disrupts the production of melatonin, the sleep hormone. But the effect is more than just physical. It's disconnecting from the endless stream of information, social comparison, and outrage allows your mind to naturally wind down. It quiets the default mode network's anxious chatter and prepares your brain for deep, restorative rest. Use this time to read a physical book, listen to calming music, talk with a loved one, or simply sit in quiet contemplation. This ritual creates a sacred, protected space at the end of your day. A gentle off-ramp from the information highway. These are not grand, life-altering changes. They are small, quiet, and consistent acts of mental hygiene. But like drops of water, carving a stone, they're gentle. Repeated application has the power to reshape the landscape of your mind, creating over time a place of deep and abiding quiet. The quiet mind in a connected world, the common question that arises when we talk about building an inner citadel and cultivating a quiet mind is, but how do I do this without isolating myself? How can I be a good friend, a loving partner, a responsive colleague, if I am constantly guarding my attention? This is a beautiful and important question. The goal of these practices is not to become a hermit, sealed off from the world in a fortress of solitude. The Stoics were deeply social beings. They believed our primary duty was to live in service of the human community, the cosmopolis. The quiet mind is not a tool for escape, but a tool for better engagement. It allows you to show up more fully, more presently, and more compassionately for the people in your life. The key is to move from a state of reactive connection to one of intentional connection. Reactive connection is the default mode of our modern world. It's answering an email the second it arrives. It's dropping everything to respond to a text message. It's feeling a constant low-level obligation to be available to everyone, all the time. This doesn't lead to deeper relationships. It leads to fragmented conversations and a sense of being perpetually pulled in 1,000 directions. You give everyone a tiny piece of yourself, but no one gets the full present you. Intentional connection is different. It's about consciously choosing when and how you engage. It involves setting gentle boundaries, not to push people away, but to ensure that when you are with them, you are truly with them. One of the most powerful practices for this is time blocking. This means scheduling specific blocks of time for focused work and also scheduling specific blocks of time for connection. For example, you might have a 90-minute block in the morning for deep work, where you are completely unreachable. But you might also have a 30-minute block later in the day, dedicated solely to answering emails and messages. When you are with your family or friends, you can practice a form of digital Sabbath. Put the phones away, out of sight. Be fully present. For the conversation, for the meal, for the shared experience. The people in your life will notice the difference. They will feel the gift of your undivided attention, which is one of the most generous and loving things you can offer. This often requires open and honest communication. You might need to explain to your colleagues, I will be in a focused work session from 9 to 11 a.m., but I will check all my messages right after that. You might need to say to your partner, let's put our phones away for the next hour and just talk. At first, this might feel strange in a culture of constant availability, but over time, People will come to respect your boundaries because they will see the benefit in the quality of your work and the quality of your presence. A quiet mind is not an isolated mind. It is a mind that is clear enough to offer its full, compassionate attention to one thing, or one person at a time. It understands that the depth of our connections is not measured by the speed of our replies, but by the quality of our presence. By building your inner citadel, you are not closing yourself off from the world. You are creating a calm, stable, and loving space from which to engage with it more meaningfully. Conclusion. The return to the quiet harbor. And so, here we are at the end of our gentle journey for tonight. We have walked through the bustling, noisy marketplace of the modern mind. We have sat at the feet of the ancient Stoics. We have peered into the intricate, beautiful machinery of the human brain. We have seen that the quest for focus is not a battle to be won, but a relationship to be cultivated, a gentle, patient, and compassionate relationship with our own wandering mind. The world will always be noisy. The sirens of distraction will always sing their seductive song. We cannot silence the storm outside. We cannot control the relentless tide of information. But we can, with gentle practice, build a quiet harbor within. We can learn to be the skillful captain of our own ship, navigating the turbulent waters with a steady hand on the rudder. The quiet mind is not an empty mind. It is a present mind. It is a mind that can sit with the fullness of life, its joys, its sorrows, its beauty, its challenges with a steady and open heart. It is a mind that knows the difference between what it can control and what it cannot, and finds its profound freedom in that distinction. It is a mind that has learned, through practice, to be a friend to itself. This journey is not about becoming a perfect, unflappable sage. It is not about reaching a final destination of perpetual calm. It is about the practice itself. It is about being a little more present today than you were yesterday. It is about treating your attention as the precious, sacred, and non-renewable resource that it is, which is about remembering, in the midst of the chaos, that you always have a choice. You can always choose to return to the breath. You can always choose to return to the quiet, unshakable center of your own being. Your inner citadel is always there, waiting for you. It is your birthright. Before we part ways on this river of quiet thought, if this journey has brought you a measure of peace or a moment of clarity, I would be so deeply grateful if you would give this video a gentle thumbs up. Subscribe to continue our explorations together, or leave a quiet comment below. I truly love reading where in the world this message finds you and what it means to you in this moment. Your presence here helps to build this community of calm, small archipelago of quiet islands in a noisy sea. Until we meet again, I wish you a night of deep and restorative rest. Or if your day is just beginning, I wish you a day of gentle, focused presence. May you be the calm and wise guardian of your own beautiful mind. Be well and be present.